would like to call this meeting to order with a reminder that the actions taken this afternoon will focus on our students and their achievement. With that, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any questions, comments?
Did anybody review the payables?
The what?
The payables? I know.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Done.
All right. Cool.
Any other questions? All right. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. I've not been contacted for public comment.
You're fine.
Any communications at this time?
None.
All right. Moving on to item E, the approval of Robinson Dressler baseball field grading improvements.
You want to start?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Just kind of a reminder to the board of what we talked about a month or a month and a half ago, that looking at completely redoing the baseball field at Robinson Dresser Park. The field was originally constructed in 1998, and the project would include everything you see on the screen. Complete regrading of the football field, or the baseball field. I have football in the brain for some reason this afternoon. Improving the drainage, because we have big drainage problems at the site. New irrigation system, all new fencing throughout the entire project, new dugouts, and replacing the lighting for the field as well. This is a kind of a picture of what it would look like and how they would change the grading for the project. Notice that outfield, or the foul line fences toward the outfield poles change, and they tilt more towards foul poles, and then the bullpens would be on the outside of the fence instead of the inside. That'd be quite an improvement on the safety of the kids and the bullpens at that time. We did ask for bids. We received 4 bids, and you can see those on the screen. The recommendation from John Biederman from Fear Graham is to accept the low quote from Peters Construction with the alternate at $595,300.47. Just a reminder to the board that this is just for the grading portion of the project only. The bids for the lighting will come to you in July.
And it's not on this, I think it's in our board packet. The estimates, this is basically about 12.5% below the estimated cost. So we feel very positive with the bids, and this will be, as Doug said, not only the grading but the fencing and some of the other improvements out there. The dugouts and the lights will come in the future. And again, the reason for the special meeting is because the hope is that this is approved today, this afternoon, we can get them on the calendar, and as soon as the baseball field or the baseball season is completed, then they can start that work hopefully August, early September.
Either explain or remind me what the alternate column means?
The alternate was for a windscreen on the outfield, and the installation of that windscreen. That's basically what the alternate's for. We have a windscreen on there now, and then it's just basically having a windscreen again when we get done.
Gotcha.
Do I have a motion to approve the bid?
I move that the Cedar Falls Community School District Board of Education approve the Robinson Dresser Baseball Field Improvement Project bid from Peters Construction of Waterloo, Iowa, in the amount of $595,300.47.
Thank you, Doug. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions, comments?
Yeah. Doug, who helped us with the specs on this?
We used Fear Graham. They are a civil engineering firm with an office in West Union. Fear Graham was recommended to us by Structure Architects and as a firm that does a lot of athletic fields for high schools and Division III colleges. And they're trying to find a civil that is an expert in that field is a little difficult, and happen to have one in our backyard.
And if this field is only 19 years old, we didn't put this kind of money in it originally.
Well, it's actually 29 years old.
29, okay, missed a decade.
And I could not
We all
answer
have
the
to.
question of what the original cost was to put the field in. I did not research that.
Okay, I thought you said it was 1998.
No, it was in '88 is when
Okay.
when the field opened. I apologize.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Well, I feel very uncomfortable about spending this much money on a baseball field. I have to say, I really don't think it's the highest and best use of our limited funds. And this is only just the grading package. I mean, we got 4 bids, so those are the numbers. I mean, it's not like we didn't bid it out, but with all the needs that we have, the additional facility requirements that we have as a district, it's just, and this puts us on the path, because I think the engineers have estimated that, you know, by the time it's all said and done, we're nearly at $1 million that are going to have to be invested in a baseball field. That you know, I guess I think about the other sports, the other things that we've approved. We've got, you know, a tennis courts that we're sharing with UNI and the city, and, you know, so there's a lot of community involvement. Our soccer fields are shared by both men and women's sport. I guess that's true of tennis as well, and are shared by the community. And I don't know. It doesn't feel like it's the highest and best use of our funds at a time when we know we have some very large expenditures that are coming up, and some very lofty goals that we've got as a district of improving our educational facilities for our kids. And I mean, just seems like a lot of money. I'd rather spend it elsewhere.
Any other thoughts, comments?
What's the lifetime we'll get out of an investment like this?
Well, certainly we believe it would be in excess of 30 years. I can tell you that since the baseball field was originally constructed back in '88, the district has really put very little resources into that field over its course, and there have been significant drainage issues with that field. That's been an ongoing problem for quite a number of years, and that's what sort of has led to all of this. We have a few safety concerns that are going to be addressed by this as well. But I know that on the lighting package alone, as we've been working on the specifications for that, we're asking for a 25-year, or it's either a 25 or 30-year warranty on the lights, so that basically the district doesn't touch them. It's included in the amount, so if a light bulb burns out, you ring them up, they come in, they take care of it. So it's designed to last that long.
And not sure what we spent back in 1988 to construct it, but it was constructed on a farm field that was donated to the district, and it's settled quite a bit over time, and that's one of the safety concerns, as I think board members are aware from the pictures that were shown to us over the course of the last several years by one of our community members. Our fence posts are coming out of the ground. We have different divots and holes in the outfield that just aren't right now conducive to what we'd have or expect. And a lot of that's due to the way it was constructed. Not a negative statement, but you know, when a light bulb burns out now, we actually have to have the truck drive across the field to be able to get the boom up, to be able to change the light bulb, which you can't do during the season. So if we lose a light right now, then we have to wait till the end of the season, or you're going to have big divots going across your ball diamond. So there's just a lot of different features that we know aren't necessarily correct. But we also know that life cycle costs is something that we have to do as we look at our 10-year plan. And Jeff and I talked about this earlier, where it's you know, I think everybody would say that there's always needs that we have for facilities, but when you look at all of our facilities across our district, we try to be attentive to all of them to make sure that they serve the needs of our kids for the purpose that they're there for.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I should have, I mean, this is probably a discussion that should have maybe taken place before now, but what kind of a review process do we do of the extracurriculars that we offer? Because we have a lot of extracurriculars that we probably didn't have in '88. So when you're talking about making investments and things like that, at what point do we review something, and how do you determine the cost-benefit ratio for participation for all of these extracurriculars? Because there's probably Jeff makes a valid point, and there's probably a lot of our extracurriculars that would love to have an infusion of that kind of capital. So how are we determining that and making those decisions?
You know, we look at that a lot when we look at, again, how many students are out, what is the importance necessarily of those activities to make sure that we have a well-roundedness. Obviously, there are some extracurricular activities that just don't need a facility of this magnitude. I think when we did the research and the study on this, there is no school district smaller than a 1A school that doesn't offer baseball. So it's one of those activities that I think is seen across the state as an important component of the educational aspect in schools, which I think is important. And we have well, and again, everybody can argue.
I'm not sure that measure's important to me, but go ahead.
But it is. I mean, if all of a sudden as a district we said, well, we're not going to offer baseball anymore, we would lose kids because of that, because there are some students that is their passion and what they desire to do. And I think that's very important. You said last meeting that your facial expressions do come out. And
Well,
they're
they
coming
do,
out.
but I mean, unless they moved, I mean, people would have to up and move. So I mean, I get that, taking that off the table. I mean, we can't make a decision. We can't make a decision as a board based on people who would actually up and move because we don't offer a sport. I mean, that's a whole other discussion for a.
Well, I think it's something that you have to be cognizant about, though, because if you're not cognizant about that, you are going to then not offer what I think most people would consider the opportunities for students and what their wishes are to have activities. And we could have the same discussion about fine arts, other extracurriculars, and again, I think you want to have a very comprehensive experience for students where they will find a passion not only in the classroom but also to be involved with multiple activities. I think that's important.
Okay, and so beyond that, how is that review done? Where is that conversation taking place, and how is that looked at? I mean, how are those things determined? Because we keep adding things, and I think you can't continually add things and probably have everything at the highest quality without at some point deciding what still is serving our student population.
Right, and I think on the flip side, you don't want the lowest quality either, so you want to make sure
Right.
you're someplace within the proper framework. A lot of that, there's not a formal process to be able to determine what is the cost per student expended per different activities and events. It's impossible to determine. There are internal conversations to find out. Now, is this something that puts us in a large liability as a district, that we may be in a position where there are defaults for any of our facilities? And I think safety is number one. You always have to look at that. Number two, you have to look at efficiency. Is this going to allow us to be more efficient, to provide better services and activities to ensure that's going to be beneficial short-term and long-term? And I think the third prong that we've kind of looked at in the past is this, again, provide better opportunities for kids, more opportunities for them to be involved. And those were the three steps that we used within our facility planning process, which this was a part of, to be approved actually this fiscal year as well by the board. So those were all different metrics that we used to try to look at, and we know we have some liability issues there. There are some safety concerns at this field. Number two, we know that our facility is what used to probably be a pride 25 years ago is now more of an eyesore, and the board's heard that from presentations by a community member. And number three, if we want to continue to offer this activity, which I think it's a very beneficial activity for students and one that a lot of kids find passion and enjoyment in, that you have to have a facility that will be able to accommodate that. And Jeff's point is well taken. We always try to find efficiencies. We want partnerships, but in this case, there's not a city baseball team. There's not a UNI baseball team. So, it's similar to if somebody says, we want you to join in building a cricket field because it could be beneficial to you as a district. Our response would be no. We don't see a need for a cricket field. So it's similar to when we go out to other entities right now and say we'd want you to chip in on a baseball field. The answer is no, because they don't have baseball teams. So this is a programmatic issue for us as a district to be able to focus in on. But we have applied for grants. We're hopeful that we can get a gaming grant. We've reached out to Bob Hellman to ask him if there's other funding sources. So I think there's ways to offset this, and we hope to encourage that into the future. But it's really, board's discretion and decision if this is something you believe is important for us to offer as a program to be able to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all your points you're making. If we are going to offer it, I do think liability-wise we have to address it. It's just I hadn't really given it much thought, as to what kind of a review process we have. I mean, I know, I don't think because we've always done it, and I know that's not what you're saying, but that's never a good reason to do anything. And across the nation, I mean, there are lots of sports that are really taking off, like lacrosse and rugby and soccer, much more than some of our older traditional American sports have, and lots of colleges have cut things like baseball and things like that. So, just because we've always done it isn't a good reason, especially when we are talking about a big infusion of capital.
Yeah,
I
so,
guess.
I mean, that's the part where I'm uncomfortable, because if I've got $1 million to spend on, and where we talked about the fact that we have facilities that are educationally deficient. So I've got $1 million to spend. Do I want to spend it on a facility that enhances the educational environment of the kids? And I understand that you're, from a well-rounded standpoint, you're saying, well, this is $1 million investment that provides an opportunity for a well-rounded, that's not necessarily in the classroom. But on my priority list, I would like to upgrade the educational facility before, which serves all students, rather than a baseball field, which, okay, that it benefits a portion of our student population, but it doesn't benefit all of our students.
And I think the response that I would give, if that's a question that's asked of me in a public location and setting, I would say, you know, I am 100% for a new high school. We have to have that. But does our high school at least allow us to have education at the level we want? No. But our baseball field in its present sense would not allow us to continue to have a baseball team if it's not upgraded. So that I understand where I think our biggest priority as a district is to ensure that we have a new high school, because that's something that we've got to get done, as we know, because of capacity, because of educational opportunities, because of pedagogy and strategies that we're just limited to right now. But in the current framework, we can still open up school and have kids come through our hallways on August 24th. If we decide not to do this with the baseball diamond, we're going to have to make a decision to say, well, we're not going to offer baseball.
That was going to be my question. So doing nothing is not an option, or if we do nothing, what is our option? I mean, safety has to be, that has to be our priority. So if we don't do anything, what do we do?
Can we limp along for a few more years as we've been doing?
Probably not. We've pounded in the post way too many times in the outfield fences. We've continued to fill holes. Right now, if you do that, we're still going to have to make an investment in the future, which is going to be much more expensive. And B, then you start talking about timing of those expenditures. You know, what is the best expense and timing to be able to ensure that it's utilized effectively within the timing framework. I think that we have been exposed as far as having a public person come forward to show, hey, we have issues with that field, issues that we weren't fully aware of. With photographic evidence, we either A, have to address those, or we're really exposed for liability purposes, or B, we have to say, we're not going to do it, we're not going to offer it. That's kind of the two options. We've explored other options. Do we bus kids every single day to practice, then bus them back home from the surrounding community, and then bus them back for batting practice, and again for games, and bus them back to either see if we could work around Waterloo's schedule or Waverly's schedule. You look at the cost effectiveness of that, though, you just can't do it. You just can't run a program like that.
Does anyone else use that field? Use it besides us?
Not formally, you know.
There is a storm shelter though, right there.
Storm shelter right there. Softball field won't move because UNI uses that, and that's been upgraded significantly. So no, it's really us. There's some city stuff that they use it, but it's not because they have a baseball team.
Is there potential that they could use it if we improve the field?
Oh, I think they would use it, but there will never be like a baseball team that's going to use it. It's going to be, you know, different groups that go out there. They have, you know, softball leagues and wiffle ball leagues and things like that.
With the city, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it is essentially shared with the city now, some, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But not for the purpose of it being a baseball field. It's it's a field that has
right.
access.
Yeah, but other physical activities. Yeah. Okay.
At one time, there was the youth program had their summer tournament there. I don't know if that still goes on or not.
Not that I'm aware of.
There are some things that take place after the season that the ball field will get used for a weekend event or something like that, but it's not on any sort of a consistent basis once the high school team season ends.
I would guess that would hurt the integrity of the field if you had a bunch of people using it during the season. I mean,
We try not to do that
Yeah,
just because it can
right.
tear up the grass and,
Right.
and things like that. So we just try to keep people off during the season. Plus, during the season, it's really utilized almost,
every day.
morning
Times a day,
to
probably.
night,
Yeah.
just with JV and other underclassmen, and then all the batting practices and all the different practice times. So it gets utilized extensively. In a perfect world, we wish didn't have to do this. We didn't have to bring this recommendation to you because, again, I think that's part of that focus as we look at how do we utilize our dollars effectively. But we also know it's been 30 years since this field's been touched, and it's kind of part of those life cycle costs when you look at the long-term expenditures for hopefully the benefit of what we can continue to provide for our kids. That's, as you have questions, if community members bring it up, that's always our focus, is we just don't have our school buildings. We have multiple other facilities that we have to continue to maintain and upkeep. And that's a challenge.
Where do the funds come from? Just refresh our memory.
If the board will recall, this was approved as a part of the 10-year master plan for
Yeah.
the physical plant and equipment
Okay,
review.
exactly.
So that's where the dollars would come from.
Okay.
I mean, I guess my request would just be, I mean, because it is a part of our 10-year plan, so I understand that this has not just been dropped on us, and I don't think we should make a snap judgment tonight and all of a sudden, make a huge decision like no longer offering a sport because of that. However, I would like to ask as a board, that we become more aware of maybe how that rigorous review is done it should be done whether it's extracurriculars or curriculum or classes or whatever our offerings are. We should be constantly looking at how does that continue to benefit our student population. Are there other things that maybe can benefit them more?
Right.
Or
Yeah, we can collect that, or we can share that data that we collect with the number of students that are involved with activities and things like that, because it's internal data that we utilize.
So I think you're saying that they are doing that, it's just that we aren't necessarily aware of that, is what you're asking.
Right, yeah,
Right.
and again, as a policy board, I'm not sure it's really, you want to get down to that level of detail.
And I'm
so-
not necessarily saying that, but if we are being asked to approve funds of this nature, I think it's important that we have all of the information that has been used to make that recommendation.
Well, no, I understand that, but again, it's information to be shared, but it's not necessarily information that I wouldn't expect that board members would be involved sitting next to our activities group to be able to decide whether or not we're going to be having baseball or which coach we're going to be hiring. So I think it's information that can be shared, but I'm sure it's not within, I don't think, the discretion of the board to be involved directly with those conversations in those meetings.
So who is on that group?
As I said just a few minutes ago, we don't have
Oh,
a very formalized, concrete process. A lot of it's just done internally. What is the makeup? What does this look like? Because you cannot come up with a cost per student expenditure analysis for every single activity. Because if you take basketball, for instance, do we bill out for all the roof repairs on the gymnasium? Do you bill out all the heating and cooling of gymnasiums? And we don't do that. Or the life cycle cost of building a gymnasium. So do we, when we look at a new high school, and the example I gave earlier today was, you look at an auditorium. Do you build an auditorium under a new high school? And if you do, it could be only utilized for 15 events per year. Is that then a cost analysis where you just compare the fine arts program versus what the auditorium will provide for the greater benefit of all kids? So it's hard to come down to, we're only going to spend, as a threshold, $30 per kid per activity.
well, I think there are ways to look at, like, say for a gym, for instance, that's also used for PE every day, so it is spread out. If you talk about an auditorium, I'm assuming in new buildings you can use different spaces that maybe you don't need an auditorium. You may not need an auditorium because you may have a space in your building that is functioning on a multiple levels so I'm just picking apart that example because I think that wasn't a great example, but so that's just the point I'm making. I'm just asking for
Yes.
a rigorous review of those things
Well, and
rather than just
think-
passing it along because we've always done it.
Well, no, and I don't think we'd ever do that. And I think that's where the board, again, that's why you hire us to be able to come with these recommendations. So you understand that we are making these recommendations based on, again, three prongs. We look at student safety, we look at efficiency, and we look at programming. And that's very important to be able to, hopefully the board has faith and trust that it's going to be done, not just as oh, well, shucks, this is what we think should happen. It's done with a lot of forethought and a lot of conversations and dialogue to make the best recommendations possible.
Any other thoughts, questions? Doug, I know you're, okay, Susie? Okay, Jeff, anything else? Jim?
Call the question.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Nay?
Okay, motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to approval of transfer funds, item F on the agenda.
We have something a little different this year. Typically what we would do at the end of the, as we would have a situation, as an example, where we had a bus in a fender bender, and we would turn in for an insurance claim, and the insurance company would pay us for that claim less the deductible. We always paid the entire amount out of the management fund. So say you had a $1,000 claim, had a $250 deductible, we get a check for $750, we put that in the management fund. The deductible comes out of the management fund to pay the $1,000. Well, starting this school year, the Department of Ed has given school districts guidance on all of this in their infinite wisdom, and they have made the determination that now they want us to pay for everything out of the appropriate fund, whether it be the general fund or PEPL or statewide 1-cent sales tax funds or whatever, and then have the management fund reimburse the appropriate fund. So, all that being said, for the background, you see that we're asking the board this year to approve a transfer of $250 from the management fund to the PEPL fund for one claim, and a total of $1,852 from the general fund to the from the management fund for other miscellaneous claims this year. I looked at this number and I just about fell out of my chair. I can't remember it ever being that low in any one year before. So we've had a very good year from an insurance perspective. Knock for Micah.
Don't jinx us.
Knock for Micah. Yes.
Kind of hard.
So,
Good. Do we have a motion to approve the fund transfer?
I move that the Cedar Falls Community School Board of Directors approve the property loss deductible transfer of $250 to the physical plant and equipment levy and $1,852.10 to the general fund from the management fund for the 2016-17 school year.
Thank you, Susan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jeff. Any questions or comments?
And the reason you're having to ask us this is because it's over $500?
no, because it's a transfer. Any transfers between funds have to be approved by the board.
Okay. For any amount?
Exactly.
Okay.
And from now on, is this going to be an
This will be an annual
Okay.
request in June. Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you for keeping us in compliance. Appreciate that.
Any other questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Item G on the agenda, approval of the authorization and payment of year-end claims.
This is a request that we've given the board for quite a number of years now, and that's to help pay end-of-year claims and keep them in a proper school year. Now, granted, this year, because we had a second board meeting in June, that list will be probably significantly less than what it has been in previous years, but I do know, as an example, the P-card payment statement comes due next week, and so I don't believe that was included in the claims list for tonight, and I know there'll be some contractor bills as the projects are going along, and try and keep that stuff caught up before we get to the end of the year. Of course, you always see those claims, and they'll be at the July school board meeting for you to review and approve as well.
Okay, good. Do I have a motion to approve item G on the agenda?
I move that the Board of Directors of the Cedar Falls Community School District give authorization to the Director of Business Affairs for the payment of the year-end claims before board approval. A listing of the year-end claims will be submitted to the board at the first school board meeting of the new fiscal year.
Thank you, Susie. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Moving on to item H on the agenda, questions, comments, concerns from the board. Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
It's been moved by Jeff. Do I have a second? Second by Susie. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.
Have we ever discussed